Alt 92.3.
Alt 92.3, Kevan, Kenney, Pete Wentz.
Hi.
Thanks for stopping by, Pete.
Thanks for having me.
Hella mega, man. How many times have you heard those two words together over the past month? Maybe past year, right? 'Cause how long has this been in the works?
Well, I mean, I'll be honest. We're kind of like procrastinators, so it's really only been the last month that I've heard the name.
Who
that we've
came
had
up
a
with the
name.
name?
I am not sure who did. It might have been Green Day, but it might have been my buddy Jonathan. I'm not really sure. I
Okay.
don't know. It was just sent to me and it was like, is this a good name? I was like, let's check with the band. And everybody was cool with it. I think it was like mostly like the spirit is supposed to be like a Monsters of Rock kind
Well, that's
of
how they
spirit.
pitched Rivers, I hear. They sent him
Yeah.
just the Monsters of Rock old school poster, like, you in.
Yeah. And he was like, yeah, I'm happy to tour with Bon Jovi,
Yeah, right.
Slayer, Metallica.
Totally.
Oh, with these other bands? I don't know.
Yeah. Who took, on that note, though, who took the most convincing? I mean, I have to imagine it was a pretty easy yes for everybody, but was it? I would imagine it would be Rivers, just because, like, you just looking up to Green Day and these bands, it must have been an easy yes for you guys. It was kind of Billie Joe's idea. Did Rivers take any convincing?
I'm not sure. I'm not privy to any of those emails at all of convincing anybody. No, I don't know. I'm not. I mean, like, this is the thing. It's at once a really big idea, but then it's just, you know, like, it's three bands that are used to just doing their own thing, you know? So, like, it's everybody compromising and everybody being like, oh, we'll do this. And it's like, when you think about it as the good of the, like this is counter-programming to me, you know, because we live in a world that's, like, super digital, super hip-hop, you know what I mean? And this is, like, the counter-programming to this. This is, like, you know, there's a lot of kids that are open to, like, a big rock show that you can go to and be at in person and that kind of stuff. But it's the good of the whole. So, like, you think about it as the good of the tour, and I don't think anybody needs a lot of convincing. If you sit there and go through, like, every, like, detail, I think it's probably, like, yeah, then it's, like, you probably got to, like, wait for an email from your manager, and does your you know, thankfully we all have the same manager, so that makes it a little
that's
easier.
a little convenient, right? I've heard you talk about that point, the counter-programming point to what's going on right now in culture. Yeah. Just, I'd love to get your thoughts as somebody who's been in the scene now for 20 years. Does a rock band mean the same as it did 20 years ago?
I think music in general is a little different than it was 20 years ago. I think it's more pervasive, and there's more of a democracy to it. Like, you can do it in your bedroom, you know, and you can be heard on some level. And if you have a great song, it can really cut through. I think Billie Eilish is coming through today, maybe here. And
moments.
yeah,
actually.
I'll be kicked out of
Have you
here
ever
when
met
I get the
Billie?
hook. No, I met her briefly at a festival.
Okay.
We both played. Or I don't know if she was even playing. I think she might have just kind of jumped on and did a song with 30 Seconds to Mars. But yeah, but I'm saying, like, a great songs great songs matter. She has this batch of great songs, great perspective, and it just cuts through everything else. It doesn't matter that it doesn't fit. Like, people are like, oh, it's got to be like this lane or that lane. None of that matters when you're making important art. And I think that going back to what you said about, yeah, it's different. So, like, I think 20 years ago, or you look back in the 80s, like, Axl Rose was like this version of Kanye West, where he's like wearing a kilt and a catcher's guard, and he's causing riots, you know, whatever. Yeah, so it's just a different, so it's a different thing, and that was driving pop culture at the time. And I think that we do live in a world where it's driven right now by hip hop, but I do think that there's a spectrum of voices, you know what I mean? And so, like, I think if you're making and doing interesting things, you can still see rock bands do, like, I think Billie's a great example of that, because I think that the music she's making, if it was made by a rock band or a pop artist or Travis Scott, like, those songs would cut through because they're great songs. Post Malone, those are great songs, you know what I mean? And it doesn't matter where you're playing them. You play them on acoustic guitar or whatever. So I think that that's important. So I think that there's still kids, like my 10-year-old just started guitar lessons. He wants to play guitar, you know, like, he doesn't, all the kids at his school kind of like dressed like Travis Scott, you know, or whatever. And, like, I just think that there's room for a bunch of different kinds of voices still.
Do you find it interesting? Because if I were to say you go from Axl to Kanye, in terms of just these personas that...
What a ride that is.
Yeah, right? But you look at, you know, obviously rock lost the gusto along the way, right? And I always have pointed to there's too many constraints or constructs rather of what is rock and what's not rock, where hip hop is just like, dude, anything can be hip hop, right? And I think your band is sort of the flip side of that, where you guys have never been too loyal to any constructs, and a Fall Out Boy record in 2019 sounds entirely different than 2003.
Thanks, man. That is actually probably my favorite thing that somebody's told me in a long time. Yeah, because I think we think about it like rock at some point became this like quaint thing that is like sold to, like through Gibson guitars to dads at like Guitar Center.
Yeah.
Which is great, but like the thing about rock music was it was dangerous, and people were like, oh my God, like I listened to this. I remember putting on Use Your Illusion or one of the records, and I was like, oh my God, I gotta like keep turning down the volume in the car with my mom because it's like all messed. He's saying all this messed up stuff, but I want to listen to it, you know what I mean? And like I'm trying to like trick my mom, or whatever. And that's what hip hop is. It's a new medium currently. I mean, I think that there are rock bands and there's solo artists and there's people who are still doing interesting, different things that push the genre.
Like who?
Who is a rock
Not
band?
to call you out, but
who's
like,
a rock band?
I'd love to check those guys out.
Yeah, I mean, to me, a great example of it is a guy like Skrillex. I think that he has like a rock at his roots. Like if you look at all the remixes he does and all the music that he does, like I would love to see a Skrillex Metallica song. I think that would be pretty amazing. I like what Brendan from Panic at the Disco does.
It's not really rock anymore, and I say that with all due respect. They're killing it right now, but
yeah, it's a different thing. Yeah, I agree with you. It's like his is a mixing of genres, and I think that there's like a flamboyance to it that is beyond it. But if you go back and you listen to like Queen records, so I did this like last week. I'm listening to these Queen records. I'm listening to like Another One Bites the Dust and Don't Stop Me Now, and I'm like, these records are bananas. We call them like rock records now or something. Because my 10-year-old was like, is this a rock record? I'm like, he's a rock song. He's like, is this a rock song? I'm like, I don't even know. Like, what? It's like its own genre. Like, you would just call it a Queen song, or whatever. And I think Panic at the Disco will be labeled at that. Yeah, I mean, I think that stuff that like a band like Fun was doing before Jack kind of moved on to a producer role was really interesting. And is like, yeah, it's the blending of all these genres. A pure rock record. I like Death from Above, that 1975 song.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of, or not 1975. It's Death from Above, 1979. Yeah. I actually, speaking of though, 1975, like I like that new song of theirs, and it was bonkers because I was like, this, I don't know who this song is for, like if it's for their fans or for, like, but it seems like they were making something that's like unadulterated, like what they want to make, which is cool. It's a time where like, if you make something that's authentic to you, people are going to give it a shot at least.
Totally. I think you were talking about the democracy of music. I also think music fans are the most forgiving they've ever been. Where you put out a dud or maybe something that doesn't pop off like you think it would, just move on. There's always a new Music Friday.
Yeah, and I think it's due. This is what it is. It's due in part to there's so much noise out there that like in order to break, like if you put out something and it's not interesting to people, it just kind of disappears. You know what I mean? So you put out something, and we experience this. So like, let's say I'm going to give you an example because I don't think people never almost give like the negative example of their own. But we put out a song with the Ghostbusters soundtrack years ago, and that movie, for whatever reason, because it was a remake or because there was women in it or whatever it was like really polarizing for people, on the internet. And our song kind of like was this tiny part of it, but it got like lumped into it. Right. And it's much noisier when you're creating something that's polarizing, which is like the thing that like Kanye or whoever's figured out. Like when you figure out like that getting people to talk is half of it. And it just moves. People just, like you said, people just move on. If they don't love it or hate it, they just kind of move on.
Totally.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
You talk about polarization, and I just saw, according to Twitter, Green Day's American Idiot just turned 15.
Yeah.
And thinking about Fall Out Boy, you guys have never really like been too political in music. Have you ever felt the pressure, though, just coming from the underground punk Chicago scene? I think of so many bands that do take that political angle. Have you ever felt the pressure internally or from others?
Not really. I mean, people will ask us, and it's like pretty obvious what our politics are, but our band is never really, to me, like it's all wrapped up into the same thing. Like the personal is super political, and who you are and how you feel, and the dialogue that you have with your friends and how you feel about yourself projected into the world is an extension. The political decisions you make are an extension of that. And I've also never really wanted to like shove our views down someone's throat. I want people to do critical thinking on their own, you know. But yeah, I mean, we live in a time where people, it's important to take stands and to say what you believe in. I think more now than ever. I think that the beauty of when American Idiot came out was that there was almost this vacuum, and it was like this sole voice. Right now, I think you see like these like think pieces every like every time you open up your social media or something, like it's a new like this is what like this is our new perspective, or whatever. And I think that like it's almost like people it's like people become numb to it because there's so many of them, and it's like this is the new worst thing, this is the new best thing, like the top 5 reasons you can't love this, or the top 20 reasons you have, and it's like I think just being who you are and being authentic to yourself is super important right now. Like I think when we talk about content programming, people think that like it's a time where you gotta like be kind of vanilla and you gotta just be go with the flow. And I think that it's just the opposite. I think you gotta be who you are right now, and people appreciate that. And that's what I really appreciate about both Post Malone and Billie Eilish. Like it just seems like they are just, this is just who I am, and you take it or you leave it, which is pretty cool.
Ozzy and Travis on the same
track. There you go, which is awesome.
It's wild, man. It's funny. I see so many parallels between the Young and Menace approach to that album, and then also what you guys are doing right now. Because Young and Menace was really an album, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you began with a song, and the song, you fell in love with the song so much, you kind of had to build an album around the song. And here we are again, however many years later, where you have Dear Future Self, but not really any plans for a larger, project. We're getting the Greatest Hits 2 in November.
Totally.
But it's a little different this time because you guys are out of your contract. You're under contract for any album commitments.
Yeah.
How does that affect you as an artist?
I mean, in some ways, it's really freeing. I guess it's got to be like the same as like when LeBron like sits down, like a mini version of LeBron sitting down on camera and being like, "Where will I go?"
Yeah, we need you and Patrick like on ESPN, right?
No, but I think that we are in a time where in order for there to be a new Fall Out Boy album, it has to be something that's exciting. And that means like maybe it's a score to a movie, or maybe it's I don't know, maybe like we talked about like like making an ice cream, and then we just like bought an ice cream truck, like so.
Is that real? You're doing the ice cream truck deal?
Yeah, right now we are. I don't know. We got to find something out, like until there's an album. But I think it's got to be new. It can't just be like another Fall Out Boy album, because it won't be exciting for people, I don't think, and it won't be exciting for us. It's got to be exciting for the artist, and then maybe that's working with a different producer or working, it's got to be something that like I think forces you to have a different perspective.
Yeah, 1,000%.
Yeah.
We're getting the rap sign. So thank you so much for stopping by.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
Again, Dear Future Self, and of course Hella Mega Tour to look forward to
Thanks,
next year.
Great questions.
Rad.
Great thought.